Hello everyone, my name is Linda THORSON and I played Tara King on the television series The Avengers. Lumiere have invited me to select and introduce 6 of my very favourite episodes, and I told them it would be more than my pleasure to do just that. I chose The Interrogators, which was written by Brian Clements and Richard Harris, mainly because it was directed by the brilliant director Charles Crichton, and I felt it was a great privilege to work with him. He directed some of the great Ealing comedies, and at the age of 80 received an Oscar for his film A Fish Called Wanda. Also, Christopher Lee, my friend, was starring in that episode, and we subsequently made a movie together in Greece. And I remember that Steed's life was threatened, and as Tara, I had to leapfrog to his rescue. Something else happened. We had to take a helicopter to Oxford because it was a location shoot, and it was terribly misty and we couldn't take off, so we had to end up going in cars, arriving about 4 hours late for the filming, and so everything was in a dreadful rush. I chose Love All because I liked the idea of a secret message hidden within a book. There was a romantic novelist who wrote a book that when you read it, you were sort of hypnotically engaged with these microdots, and Tara was made to fall in love with the first person she would see. It turned out to be Terence Alexander, who was starring in the episode. However, he turned out to be a baddie and wanted me to jump out a window, which didn't seem like a very good idea. What else happened? Peter Sykes was directing the episode, and he was trying to show Patrick something very specific he wanted done with the Rolls Royce, and he bashed it up while he was doing this, so we had to sort of wait for hours while it was fixed. Which also reminds me that the second day of my filming ever in the entire series, I turned the Lotus Europa into a wall in front of the entire camera crew, and I think I heard things like, "God, woman driver." Anyway, after that I got an AC Cobra, and that was easier to drive, and then in real life I got myself a Mustang. Take Me to Your Leader was written by Terry Nation, who was the creator of the Daleks, and it was directed by Robert Fust, who is a great friend of mine, Bob. And he was a brilliant action director. However, this episode was done entirely on location, and it never stopped raining. So we were up to our knees in mud. There was an accident between a bubble car and a motorcycle, and the constant faint smell of dog, since there was a large Alsatian named, I believe, Toby, who starred in the episode. And I think if you watch, you'll see that it's the only time I blow my own trumpet. Now, you might think that Thingamajig is a rather odd choice for a favourite. It was directed by Leslie Norman, whose son is the famous film critic Barry Norman. And during this episode, we were again on location, and it was raining, and it was the middle of January 1969, and I got sick for the first and only time. And perhaps I remember this episode so fondly because I spent 5 days in bed in my own flat recovering. And this gave Rhonda Parker a chance to really shine because she sort of took over my bits in the episode. But you know something? They still wouldn't let her talk. I chose Requiem because I remember that we really had quite a lot of fun on the episode. Don Chaffee was directing. He directed 4 or 5 episodes that I did. And at that point, it was the second year of filming, and things were actually getting a bit chaotic. We were trying to meet American air dates, and we're getting a bit behind. So sometimes we were doing 3 episodes at once, and I would be running back and forth in and out of the wardrobe, changing and picking up different scripts, going on the set and meeting new actors. And Don handled the whole thing really, really beautifully. And John Kearney was starring in the episode, and his voice had this uncanny resemblance to James Mason, and he kept sneaking up behind me and reading Robert Burns' poems in James Mason's voice. It was just all too confusing. The episode called Pandora is my absolute favourite. It was written by Brian Clements, and I think it's one of his favourites too, and directed by Robert Fust. And it was very special to me because in this episode I got to do something a little bit different. It was a period piece. Tara's drugged and taken away. And I had these rather unusual costumes. My hair was all pulled back. And it showed a different aspect of my acting and my personality. She was very feminine and defenseless. And Julian Glover was in the episode, one of my all-time favourite actors. And I had a wedding dress that was simply glorious. It was pink with white lace on it, and there was this enormous hat that went with it. And I was photographed in that for the cover of the TV Times. And in fact, that was my all-time favourite costume in all the Avengers episodes as well.